Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video, and today's video is our pricing video where we go over sort of notable CGC 9.8 sales from this past week off of eBay. And you know, if you're like me and you really like CGC 9.8 collecting, probably the best thing you can do is to just stay on top and be knowledgeable of the current market prices, because there's quite a big range of prices between, you know, the same exact book. So a CGC 9.8 in the same exact book can sometimes go for $100 to $200 more, kind of depending on the book, but you know, anywhere from 20 to 30% more, depending on the auction, depending on if someone's knowledgeable of the price and maybe they just pay up instead of knowing the right price and waiting. So yeah, staying on top of these current market prices I think is the best thing you can do as a CGC 9.8 collector and investor to make sure you don't overpay, and that's sort of, you know, the main goal when you're buying these CGC 9.8 comics. So this list here that we got, they are all eBay prices. They're all in US dollars. I'll put a list in the description below of all the issues that we talk about here, so you could just easily look that up as a resource. And all these books are CGC 9.8 books as well. So we'll start off here with Amazing Spider-Man number 361. So I brought out one here that I have, and a couple sold this past week. One in the newsstand and one in a direct version. So the direct version sold for $405, and the newsstand version sold for $407. So yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 361 first, Carnage, CGC 9.8. Looking at these two, both of them were nicely centered, very nicely centered. A lot of times on the spine here, you'll see the back cover show, and the back cover is like brown. So the sort of brownness on the spine shows quite easy when the issue is not perfectly centered. So this one is a perfectly centered one. If you notice, there's none of the back cover there, if you can notice. And yeah, for me with Amazing Spider-Man 361, I'm always really picky about the centering because there's so many CGC 9.8s of Amazing Spider-Man 361. So I just like when the issue looks perfectly centered. And that's, you know, this is kind of the reason why I picked this one up. And yeah, I might as well let you guys know here, this 407 that was a newsstand that sold for $407, I purchased that one. So I got a direct version here, if you notice. And now I got a newsstand for this one that I purchased at $407. So that'll be an unbox video in the next week or two, depending on how long it takes to get here. And it did come from the US, so probably closer to 2 weeks, I would say. Our second book here, Uncanny X-Men 266. One of these sold for $385. And on maybe a week or two video, one had sold for, it was $345 in the Uncanny X-Men 266, first Gambit. So yeah, a couple weeks ago, $345 I believe it was. This week, $385. A lot of times it's going to depend on if the issue's centered and looks really good. You know, if it's centered and looks really good, a lot of times it'll go for $50 more than sort of a rock bottom price. In a new case, this one was too. So first Gambit for $385, not too bad. Silver Surfer 44, first Infinity Gauntlet, and this one of these sold for $157.68. So this book I think is kind of cooling down a little bit, you know, post kind of Avengers Endgame, and this is a lot less than what I paid for mine. Mine was $230. So yeah, $157.68, a really good deal I think for Silver Surfer 44. Seems to be cooling off, you know, now that the Infinity Gauntlet and Thanos aren't going to be in kind of every movie, I guess. Big mega key sold. Amazing Spider-Man number 300. In the new case, it was looking quite good. I wouldn't say it was perfect with like extremely vibrant colors or anything, but it was looking really quite good. Amazing Spider-Man 300, origin and first appearance of Venom, went for $1,899 in the CGC 9.8, and that was an auction. It wasn't like a buy it now or anything, so the price kind of built up to that over the week. And I would say that's about an average price. You know, I didn't think it was like the best looking 300. I think the color, like the background was a little orange, whereas, you know, you really want to see the 300 in the background really red and vibrant. On a perfect Amazing Spider-Man 300, but still a really nice one. Next one, a Batman Harley Quinn sold. So the Alex Ross Batman Harley Quinn first appearance in DC continuity. And this one this week sold for $325. It was in a new case. A few pricing videos from weeks back. One sold for $290 and one sold for $300. So this one's selling for $325, kind of in that range. And I think that's a pretty good deal. If you can get it for $300 to $290 to $300, I think that works too. $325, hey, if it's looking really good, why not pay an extra $20? Yeah, that's not too bad. Another mega key here, Batman Adventures 12. So first appearance of Harley Quinn. One of these sold, and sold for a little bit more than what I've seen. I think it was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. One sold for $1,799. So this one sold for $1,926. Batman Adventures 12. So a little bit more than Amazing Spider-Man 300 this week. So yeah, those issues are about even, I would say. And for me, Amazing Spider-Man, that CGC 9.8 ratio is about 6%, so a lot lower. The Batman Adventures 12 9.8 ratio is about 13%, I believe, or 14%. Can't remember exactly, but I know it's not under 10. So yeah, Amazing Spider-Man I think is still a lot more relatively rare. So unless you're like the biggest Harley Quinn fan ever, if you had to choose between the two, I would still choose Amazing Spider-Man 300 as the better investment grade book. Although it's really, really close, so close. They're both great books to have if you can afford them. Next book here, Batman 635. This is first Jason Todd as Red Hood, and in the past, maybe a year or two, you've seen this book go for quite a lot more. And last week it went for $150. So I think this book's cooling off quite a bit from that initial, when everyone sort of just kind of realized that this was sort of a key issue kind of thing, and it really spiked up to, I think some of these were going over $300 at some point. So $150 now, which I think is kind of a pretty good deal actually. Like that's getting into, if I saw one of those in Canada pop up for around $150, I'd probably take a stab at it. An Amazing Spider-Man 265, first Silver Sable sold for $210. And you're in between $200 and $250 for that book. It sells quite often. Not the most eye-catching cover or anything like that, but you still get first Silver Sable, so I think that's a pretty good deal. A Batman Vengeance of Bane sold in a new case it was a CGC 9.8 in a new case, obviously, for $235. And that's pretty much exactly what I paid for mine like 2 months ago, I would say. So Batman Vengeance of Bane in a new case is going for about $230, $235 this week. A couple weeks ago, last week or the week after, before, one sold in an old case for $200. So I think that's rock bottom. A really good looking one in the new case is about $235 to $250, I would say. Fantastic Four number 158. This is a book from 1975. Not a key issue, but I thought it was really cool and a pretty decent price for a book from 1975 in such good condition. Went for $248. That's Fantastic Four number 158. Not a key issue again, just really cool kind of old book, 1975 for $248. That's not too bad. A Wildcats number 1 in the gold edition. So it's like a gold, completely gold cover, which is quite rare, whereas Wildcats number 1 is not rare at all. Usually that'll go in the CGC 9.8 for like $40 or $50, Wildcats number 1. But a Wildcats number 1 gold went for $250. And that's kind of cool if you're like a super Jim Lee fan and you're really into Image Comics when they first came out. That's kind of a cool one actually. Shazam number 1 sold in the CGC 9.8 in an auction in a new case, looking pretty good this one, for $634. And this is an issue that's quite hot right now. So yeah, I don't know if I would dive right in quite yet, because I'm pretty sure before sort of the Shazam movie came out, this issue was sort of in that, 400 to 500 range maybe. Now over 600. I think if you wait a couple years on that, maybe even a couple months, once the hype just completely dies down, you might get a better deal on that, I think. So this is my kind of deal of the week, this next one. So a Batman The Dark Knight Returns #1 in the CGC 9.8 sold for $410. And that's way less than what I paid for mine. And you know, the auction was, you could tell it was an amateur type auction. The feedback score on the seller was only a couple hundred. I think it was in like the first, it was like 100 and something. So not a very, and yeah, the pictures weren't looking that good, and even in the title, it literally said like CGC 9.8, Batman The Dark Knight Returns #1. Like that's it. No first appearance Carrie Kelly, no, like he didn't put DC in the year or anything, so it really seemed like an amateur auction. But for $410, that is such an amazing deal for Batman The Dark Knight Returns #1. Yeah, I kind of wish I saw it, and I would have probably taken a stab at it for sure, because yeah, I ended up paying like $800 for mine. And I thought at the time that I was, you know, out of all the buy it nows on the internet, that I was paying up about 50 to $100. But yeah, if these are going to start going for $410, I might have to throw them on my watch list a little bit more. Maybe grab another one. Next book here, Moon Knight #25, The First Black Spectre. This is a quite sought after book from that, probably the most sought after book from that whole Moon Knight run. This one sold, buy it now, for $499. So someone wanted this book really bad. And yeah, obviously the Moon Knight series is coming out on Disney Plus, so I think, yeah, Moon Knight books right now a little bit inflated in price because of these, you know, these announcements, similar to kind of She-Hulk, I would say. Alpha Flight #33, kind of a cool underfollowed key issue here. Alpha Flight #33, which is First Lady Deathstrike. One of those sold for $99. And that's a pretty good value, I think, for, you know, $99 for First Lady Deathstrike. Kind of an underfollowed issue too, being Alpha Flight #33. An Immortal Hulk #1 sold. The Alex Ross cover, Immortal Hulk #1, first print. One sold for $71. And that's, you know, if you're on a budget and you're into some of these modern books, I think that's a really cool modern book to grab. Really cool movie adaptation comic that I hadn't seen for a really long time, actually. Batman Mask of the Phantasm movie adaptation. And there's a bunch of different variant covers. This one was the Bruce Timm cover. So the you know, the guy that drew Batman Beyond and a lot of the Batman animated series. So really cool cover too, actually. One of these sold for $215. Batman Mask of the Phantasm movie adaptation. And yeah, I think, you know, without that remastered Mask of the Phantasm coming out, I'm not sure if that one would have went over for over $200. But you know, I haven't looked on the CGC census for those though, so I'm not too sure how rare they are. Maybe they're a little bit more rare than I think, but yeah, $215 for like a movie adaptation seems a bit expensive. I know Batman, the 1980s first Batman movie, has a movie adaptation comic, and usually that'll go for like $80 about. So this might be a little bit inflated because of the Mask of the Phantasm movie. A Detective 737 sold, which is the first Harley Quinn in Detective. I believe it's her third appearance in DC continuity. One of those sold for $124.99. And that's a book that I have. There's not a lot in the CGC census, less than 100 on the CGC census, so that's kind of a cool one to get if, you know, maybe that Batman Harley Quinn is out of your price range, which is, yeah, sold for, what was it, $310 this week? Or $325 this week, actually. Yeah, if that's out of your price range, Detective 737, really good secondary book. Batman 567. This is the first Cassandra Cain, first Batgirl. One of these sold for $185. And I'd seen this book about a week ago, and I thought, you know, I did a completed listing search, and it was you know, right off the bat, it was a really good price because it was just a buy it now. You know, you don't really see those often where it's a really good price as just a buy it now. But I almost took a stab at that, actually. And I didn't though, and it ended up selling just a couple days later, so I think that was a really good price. $185 for Batman 567, first Cassandra Cain. I've seen a lot of those go for over $250, and every now and then I think someone takes a stab at a buy it now, because buy it nows in that issue are like $300, $350 at times. Next book, really cool book, Amazing Spider-Man 298, one of my favorite Amazing Spider-Man books. First Todd McFarlane Spider-Man, and first Eddie Brock in cameo. One of these sold for $235.50, and I think that's a really good price. I've seen many sort of last year and even earlier this year sell for like $260, $275, $270, $280. So $235.50, looking pretty good too. I think maybe slightly off-centered, which is, you know, why maybe the extra $25 less than what I think this issue normally goes for. But still, new case, you know, Amazing Spider-Man 298, CGC 9.8, $235.50. Good deal, I think. New Mutants 87, the first Cable. Another pretty good deal here, too. I think, you know, in some sense, I think we're kind of in the dog days of the summer here where, you know, there's some really good deals popping up, and I think it's, you know, people are on vacation, or, you know, they're not, you know, collectors and investors like me aren't really diligently keeping an eye on eBay or something, because yeah, New Mutants 87 first Cable went for $371.88 in an auction. And yeah, to me, I always thought that book was more of an over 400 book for sure. And you know, with that book and, you know, an Amazing Spider-Man 298 going for a lot less, well, let's say $50 less than I've seen it go for, and Batman The Dark Knight Returns going for $410. And yeah, again, generally you see those sell for $600, $700 like all the time. So yeah, I think sort of in the dog days of summer maybe this week, and who knows, maybe in the next couple weeks, so you might be able to find some deals. But again, New Mutants 87 first Cable went for $371.88. I think that's a pretty good deal too, under $400 for that. And last issue here is The Boys #1, so that pretty popular Amazon show. You know, when it first came out, it was well received, and there were a lot of these Boys #1s that sold for like $310, $320-ish. Well, this week, The Boys #1 sold for $410, so I'm not sure if the show's getting better, or if, and it was quite well reviewed and well received from, you know, some of my friends that had told me about it. Yeah, I don't have Amazon Prime, so I have not seen this, but people tell me it's really good. And yeah, probably over the last month, you know, when that show first hit, they were selling for about $310, $320. This one selling for $410, The Boys #1. And yeah, I mean, personally, I don't recommend, you know, if you watch this channel, I don't really recommend to go out buying comic books like that where, you know, a show's doing really hot, so you go out and buy the comic. In general, if you wait a little bit longer, you let the hype die down a little bit, I think The Boys #1 will kind of, you know, eventually over time go back to that sort of like $275, maybe even $250 area, $250 to $300, I would say. There's a lot of really cool key issues in that area, so yeah, I think when The Boys #1 does kind of die down the hype a little bit, I think it will go back to that area, so maybe want to wait for that. It depends though, you know, if you just really like the show. And, you know, this one went for $410, had a couple, you know, weeks before go for like $310, $320, $330, so maybe you wait for that price instead of this $410. I think that might be a good strategy if you really want it now. Alright, that is the full list today, so I will put this list in the description below with all the prices, so you can kind of follow along and, you know, have it as a resource to see all the prices really quick at a quick glance. But yeah, you know what, if you're really serious about collecting CGC 9.8 books like I am, you know, the best thing you can do is just stay on top of the prices for a lot of the books that you want. Because then, you know, if you see an auction pop up and it seems like it's an elevated price, you're going to know what the past few prices were for that issue, and you're going to say, oh, this guy's asking $100 too much, you know, so, you know, not even going to, you know, look at that. And that's the best thing you can do. You're going to save, you know, when you're buying these CGC 9.8 books for a couple $100, or, you know, even $300, $400, $500 at a time sometimes, you're going to save yourself a couple $100 by knowing all the prices and just being really patient. That's what I always recommend is, you know, these CGC 9.8 books, you'd think they're really, really rare, but actually, they're actually not. They, you know, if you're really patient, almost all these CGC 9.8 books from the 80s and 90s that you would want will pop up in an auction if you're really patient. You know, give it a couple months and yeah, you're going to save yourself a couple $100. And if you know the prices, you'll know when one is super elevated and you just won't even give it the time of day. And that's where you want to be when you're collecting and investing in these CGC 9.8 books. Okay, so that's it for today's list. Yeah, thank you very much for watching the video today. If you haven't already, please join the team and subscribe to Team CGC here. Team CGC 9.8. Hit that bell, get all the latest notifications too. We're doing about 4 or 5 videos a week, so hit that bell, you'll get all the latest video updates. But thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you on the next video.